Chapter 9, Nutrients Essential for Healthy Tissues. How do 3 trace minerals help maintain healthy blood? Like all connective tissue, blood has cellular components in a matrix. The 3 cellular components are as follows. Erythrocytes, or red blood cells, are the cells that transport oxygen. Leukocytes are white blood cells, and they are key to our immune function. They defend against infection and progression of cancer. Platelets. These are cell fragments that assist in the formation of blood clots and help to stop bleeding. Plasma is the watery matrix of blood in which the cells and platelets flow. The circulation of blood is critical to life because it transports oxygen and nutrients to our cells and removes carbon dioxide and other waste products generated from metabolism. Among the micronutrients required for healthy blood, the trace mineral iron plays the leading role in enabling blood cells to transport oxygen. This particular slide is the overview of nutrients that are essential for healthy tissues. Iron, zinc, copper, vitamin B6, folate, vitamin B12, vitamin K, vitamin C, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, fluoride, and vitamin D, and we'll go into each one of these separately. Again, the components of blood are erythrocytes, leukocytes, platelets, and plasma. This particular slide shows that blood has the 4 components which are visible when blood is drawn into a test tube and spun in a centrifuge. The bottom layer is the erythrocytes, or the red blood cells. The milky layer above the erythrocytes contains the leukocytes and the platelets, and the yellow fluid on top is the plasma. Iron is a component of the oxygen-carrying proteins in blood and muscle. A trace mineral, iron, is needed in very small amounts, yet the World Health Organization lists iron deficiency as the most common nutrient deficiency in the world. Function of iron. Iron is a component of numerous proteins in the body. Almost 2/3 of all iron in the body is found in hemoglobin, the oxygen-carrying protein in our red blood cells. As shown in this slide that we just looked at, the hemoglobin molecule has 4 polypeptide chains, each with its iron-containing hem group, heme. Because you cannot survive for longer than a few minutes without oxygen, the ability to transport oxygen throughout the body is critical to life. In the bloodstream, iron acts as a shuttle, picking up oxygen inhaled into the lungs, binding it during its transport to red blood cells, and then dropping it off again in body tissues. Iron is also a component of myoglobin, a protein similar to hemoglobin, but found in muscle cells. As part of myoglobin, iron assists in the transport of oxygen into the muscle cells. Iron is also found in enzymes called cytochromes that are active in the metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. In the mitochondria alone, more than 12 of these iron-requiring enzymes help produce energy. Iron is also necessary for the enzymes involved in DNA synthesis and plays a role in the cognitive development and immune health. Finally, iron is part of the antioxidant enzyme system that assists in the fighting free radicals. Interestingly, excess iron can also act as a pro-oxidant and promote the production of free radicals. Iron storage and recycling. Our bodies contain relatively little iron. Men have 500 to 1,500 milligrams of iron in their body, while women have 300 to 1,000 milligrams. Excess iron can be stored in the liver, bone, marrow, intestinal mucus, and spleen. These stores can provide us with iron when our diets are inadequate. As aging cells, including red blood cells, break down, their iron is released and recycled. The liver and spleen are responsible for this iron recycling program, which greatly reduces the body's reliance on dietary iron. Each day, about 85% of the iron released from hemoglobin breaks down, is reused in the body. This particular slide shows iron is contained in the portion of the hemoglobin and myoglobin. Iron absorption. This particular slide is showing the storage that I just talked about and recycling. Iron absorption. A person's ability to absorb iron from the diet is influenced by the following factors. Iron status. When iron stores are high, the amount of iron absorbed in the diet is low. However, iron absorption rates are higher in people with poor iron status, such as those with iron deficiency, pregnant women, and people who have recently experienced blood loss. Stomach acid. Adequate amounts of stomach acid are necessary for iron absorption. People with low levels of stomach acid have a decreased ability to absorb iron. This population includes many older adults and people who take medications that inhibit stomach acid production. The next one is the amount of iron in diet. People who consume low levels of dietary iron absorb more iron from their foods than people with higher dietary iron intakes. The type of iron in our foods you eat. Foods have two types of iron. Heme iron is part of hemoglobin and myoglobin and is found only in animal-based foods such as meat, fish, and poultry. Non-heme iron, which is not part of the hemoglobin or myoglobin, is found in both plant-based and animal-based foods. Heme iron is more absorbable than non-heme iron. Since iron in animal-based foods is 40% heme iron and 60% non-heme iron, animal-based foods are a good source of absorbable iron. Meat, fish, and poultry also contain a special meat factor. This enables or enhances the absorption of non-heme iron. In contrast, all of the iron found in plant-based foods is non-heme iron, and no absorption enhancing factor is present. However, any vitamin C in the food itself or in accompanying foods or beverages will enhance the absorption of non-heme iron. Other dietary factors. Iron absorption is reduced from foods containing certain elements, including such as lime, legumes, rice, and whole grains. So those grains contain phytates. Polyphenols in tea, coffee, and red wine also reduce iron absorption, as do soybean protein and calcium. Because these dietary factors alter the amount of iron absorbed, it is estimated that the bioavailability of iron from a vegetarian diet is approximately 1 to 10%, whereas average is 18% for a mixed Western diet. A number of special circumstances can significantly affect iron status, and these are in table 9.2 of your text. So this slide shows the circumstances affecting iron status. So the use of oral contraceptives, breastfeeding, and then consumption of iron-containing foods and supplements are all going to be circumstances that improve your iron status. Circumstances that diminish your iron status include use of hormone replacement therapy, eating a vegetarian diet, intestinal parasite infection, blood donation, and intense endurance exercise will all diminish your iron. This is common foods that contain iron: wheat checks, fried clams, pork and beans, lentils, spinach, beef chuck, garbanzo beans, tomato puree, and then roasted chicken. And of course you can see the different amounts. So you can see the RDA for women appears to be somewhere around 18 milligrams, whereas for men it may be around 8 milligrams. Iron toxicity. In the United States, Accidental iron overdose is the most common cause of poisoning deaths in children 6 years and younger. Thus, dietary supplements need to be stored well out of reach of children. Symptoms of iron toxicity include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, confusion, and rapid heart rate. If iron toxicity is not treated quickly, significant damage to the heart, central nervous system, liver, and kidneys can result in death. Adults who take iron supplements, even at low doses, commonly experience constipation, gastrointestinal distress such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Taking iron supplements with food can reduce its adverse effects in most, but not all people. In the United States, 1 in 200 to 500 people suffer from an inherited disorder called hemochromatosis, which causes excessive dietary iron absorption. Because the body has no mechanism for eliminating excess iron, iron accumulates in body tissues, causing organ damage and other diseases. Treatment includes restricting dietary iron intake, avoiding high intakes of vitamin C, and occasionally withdrawing blood. Iron deficiencies. Populations in particularly high risk for iron deficiencies include infants and young children, adolescent girls, menstruating women, and pregnant women. Iron deficiencies progresses in stages, beginning with depletion of iron stores. During the first stage, there is no general physical symptoms because hemoglobin levels are not yet affected. The second stage of iron deficiency causes a decrease in the transport of iron and production of heme, leading to symptoms of reduced work capacity. The final stage of iron deficiency is true anemia. The term anemia literally means without blood. It is used to refer to any condition in which hemoglobin levels are low. Some anemias are inherited disorders. For instance, sickle cell anemia is a genetic disorder in which the red blood cells have a sickle or half-moon shape. Thalassemia is a genetic disorder in which red blood cells are small and short-lived. Hemorrhagic anemias result from blood loss. Other anemias are due to microdeficiencies or micronutrient deficiencies. These can be classified according to the general way they alter the size and shape of red blood cells. Low iron, copper, vitamin B6 causes microcytic anemia, or small red blood cells, micro meaning small, and cyte meaning cell. In contrast, inadequate intakes of folate or vitamin B12 causes macrocytic anemia. These processes are shown in figure 9.6 in your textbook. In iron deficiency anemia, the red blood cells produced are smaller than normal, with lower hemoglobin, and therefore cannot transport adequate oxygen. As a result, the body produces less energy, and classic symptoms of iron deficiency anemia occur. These include impaired work performance, neurological function, general fatigue, pale skin, and depressed immune function. Pregnant women with severe anemia are at higher risk for low birth weight infants, premature delivery, increased infant mortality, and postpartum hemorrhaging. Zinc contributes to hemoglobin. Zinc is a trace mineral that has multiple functions within every body system. Functions of zinc. The functions of zinc can be grouped into 3 general categories. Enzymatic, structural, and regulatory. Enzymatic functions. Zinc is required for more than 300 different enzymes in the body. Without zinc, these enzymes cannot function. For example, we require zinc for digestion and metabolism and to synthesize the heme structure of hemoglobin. In this way, zinc contributes to the maintenance of blood health. Structural functions. If proteins lose their shape, they lose their function. Zinc helps to stabilize the structure of proteins involved in the gene expression, vision, antioxidant enzyme systems, and immune function. In fact, zinc has received so much attention for its contribution to immune health that zinc lozenges have been formulated to fight the common cold. Research suggests that these lozenges may be at least modestly effective. Regulatory functions. Zinc helps regulate gene expression and thus the body functions of these genes control. For example, without zinc, certain genes that regulate cell division during fetal development are not expressed. After the child is born, growth is stunted. A number of biological actions require zinc in all three of these functions above. The key example is normal growth. In fact, zinc deficiency was discovered in the early 1960s when researchers were trying to determine the cause of severe growth retardation in a group of Middle Eastern men. Recommended intakes and food sources of zinc. Overall zinc absorption is similar to that of iron, ranging from 10 to 35% of dietary zinc. People with poor zinc status absorb more zinc than individuals with optimal zinc status, and zinc absorption is increased during pregnancy, childhood, and adolescence. Several dietary factors influence zinc absorption. High non-heme iron intakes can inhibit zinc absorption, which is the primary concern with iron supplements that are not non-heme, particularly during pregnancy and lactation. High intakes of heme iron appear to have no effect on zinc absorption. The phytates and fiber found in whole grains and beans strongly inhibit zinc absorption. In contrast, dietary protein, especially animal-based protein, enhances zinc absorption. It's not surprising then that the primary cause of zinc deficiency in Middle Eastern men just mentioned was their low consumption of meat and high consumption of beans and flatbreads, high in phytates. The yeast added to this type of bread that they ate reduced the phytate content. The recommended intake for zinc is listed in table 9.1 of in your text. Good food sources include meat, fish, poultry, and enriched grains and cereals. As zinc is significantly more absorbable in animal-based foods, zinc deficiency is a concern for people eating a vegan diet. Zinc toxicity and deficiency. Consuming a diet high in zinc does not appear to lead to a toxicity. However, toxicity can occur from consuming zinc supplements. Toxicity symptoms include GI pain, dysfunction, headaches, depressed immune function, and high intake of zinc also interfere with the copper absorption and thus can reduce copper status. Zinc deficiency is uncommon in the United States, but does occur in countries in which people consume predominantly grain-based foods. Symptoms include growth retardation, delayed sexual maturity and impotency, impaired appetite, and other problems. As zinc is critical to the healthy immune system, zinc deficiency also results in an increased incidence of infections. Again, toxicity is rare, and deficiency is also rare in the United States, although if it does happen, symptoms are growth retardation, delayed sexual maturity, and increased risk of infection. Copper is critical for iron transport. Copper is a trace mineral that plays an important role in blood health because it is a component. Ceruloplasmin, a protein that is important for iron transport. If ceruloplasmin levels are inadequate, iron accumulates, causing symptoms similar to those described in the genetic disorder of hemochromatosis. Copper also functions in energy metabolism, in the synthesis of connective tissue proteins, collagen and elastin, and in the superoxidant dismutase antioxidant enzyme system. Copper is also necessary for the regulation of certain neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, important to nervous system function. As you can see in table 9.1 in your text, our need for copper is small. Copper is widely distributed in foods, and people who eat a variety or a varied diet can easily meet their requirements. Good food sources for copper include organ meats, seafood, nuts, and seeds. Whole grain foods are also relatively good sources. As with zinc and iron, people with low dietary copper intake absorb more copper than people with high dietary intakes. Also recall that high zinc intakes can reduce copper absorption and subsequently copper status. In fact, zinc supplementation is used to treat the rare disorder called Wilson's disease, in which copper toxicity occurs. The long-term effects of copper toxicity are not well studied in humans. Copper deficiency is rare. However, low copper status can inhibit the synthesis of hemoglobin and result in inadequate iron utilization and trigger a microcytic anemia. There's this particular slide are common food sources for copper. Common food sources for copper, and the RDA for copper is 90 units a day for men and women. So oysters, cashews, nuts, lobster, mushrooms, baked potatoes, garbanzo beans, pork and beans, spinach. This particular slide is the development of red blood cells versus anemias. When iron, copper, and vitamin B6 is inadequate, microcytic anemia develops because there is not enough hemoglobin synthesis to make normal red blood cells. When folate or vitamin B12 is inadequate, macrocytic anemia develops because the red blood cells cannot mature and divide properly. Vitamin K supports blood clotting. Vitamin K is a fat-soluble vitamin important for a number of metabolic functions, including functions involved in blood and bone health. Research has revealed roles for vitamin K in inflammation, hormone regulation, and defense against cancer. Its role in the synthesis of proteins involved in maintaining bone density is discussed shortly. Vitamin K supports blood health by acting as a coenzyme that assists in the synthesis of a number of proteins that are involved in the coagulation or clotting of blood, including prothrombin and several proteins, procoagulants. Without adequate vitamin K, blood does not clot properly. Clotting time can be delayed or even fail to occur. The failure of blood to clot can lead to increasing bleeding and even minor wounds, as well as internal hemorrhaging. The AI for vitamin K is listed in table 9.1 in your text. Although it is relatively low, many Americans fail to meet it because vitamin K is found in few foods. Green leafy vegetables such as broccoli, turnip greens, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage are good sources, as are soybeans and canola oils. The GI flora in the large intestine tract produce vitamin K, providing us with an important non-dairy source. Infants are typically given an injection of vitamin K at birth because they lack the mature flora necessary to produce this nutrient. There are no known side effects associated with consuming large amounts of vitamin K for supplements or from food, and no upper limit has been established for vitamin K at this time. As just noted, vitamin K deficiency inhibits the blood's abilities to clot, resulting in excessive bleeding. Although vitamin K deficiencies are rare in humans, people with diseases that cause malabsorption of fat, such as celiac disease, Crohn's disease, and cystic fibrosis, can suffer secondarily from the deficiency of vitamin K. So again, the recommended intake, there's no RDA for vitamin K, and the AI values are 120 units a day for men and 90 units a day for women, and sources of vitamin K include green leafy vegetables and vegetable oils. There's no side effects for consuming large quantities of vitamin K, and if you don't consume enough, it definitely reduces your blood clotting ability, and you may have excessive bleeding as a result. And it also diseases, this occurs with diseases that limit the absorption of fat in the small intestines. Vitamin C. Collagen is the fibrous protein present in the matrix of connective tissue, the most abundant protein in the body. It provides structure to bones, teeth, skin, and tendons, blood vessels, and many other tissues and organs. Collagen is a helical structure, and acts like a scaffold, helping to hold the tissues together and giving it strength and flexibility. It also helps prevent bruising, and it supports wound healing because it is a component of scar tissue and of the tissue that mends broken bones. Collagen cannot be formed and maintained without adequate vitamin C. In severe vitamin C deficiency, body tissues essentially fall apart. This disorder is known as scurvy. Scurvy is thought to have caused more than half of the deaths that occur on long sea voyages centuries ago. In fact, the name of one of the active forms of vitamin C, ascorbic acid, is derived from the combined Latin terms meaning not having scurvy. During long sea voyages, the crew ate all of the fruits and vegetables rich in vitamin C early in the trip, then had only grain and animal products available until they reached land to resupply. In 1740, in England, Dr. James Lind discovered that citrus fruits can prevent scurvy. We now know that this is due to the high vitamin C content. Decades after Lind's discovery, the British Navy began requiring all ships to provide daily lemon or lime juice rations for sailors, earning them the nickname limeys. It wasn't until 1930 that vitamin C was discovered and identified as a nutrient. Adequate intakes of vitamin C prevent scurvy because it is critical to the synthesis of collagen. Vitamin C acts as a coenzyme to specific enzymes that are required to convert collagen precursors, procollagen, to collagen. Recall that in Chapter 8 that the coenzyme is a compound that is needed for an enzyme to be active. If a person is deficient in vitamin C, the necessary synthesis reactions cannot occur. As a result, the collagen chains that are produced cannot link and twist into thick strands of fibers. Instead, they will be weak and quickly destroyed. Because the body cannot form collagen without adequate vitamin C, tissue hemorrhage or bleeding occurs. The symptoms of scurvy appear about 1 month of the vitamin C deficiency diet and include bleeding gums, loose teeth, wounds that fail to heal, swollen ankles and wrists, bone pain, fractures, diarrhea, weakness, depression. Vitamin C may also be involved in the synthesis of other compounds of connective tissue, such as elastin and bone matrix. Vitamin C has many other roles in the body. In addition to connective tissue, vitamin C assists in the synthesis of DNA bio-neurotransmitters such as serotonin, which helps regulate mood. Carnitine, which transports long-chain fatty acids from cytosol into the mitochondria for energy production. In addition, many hormones are synthesized with the assistance of vitamin C, including epinephrine, norepinephrine, thyroid hormones, steroid hormones, and vitamin C is important to a healthy immune system. As learned in Chapter 8, vitamin C also acts as a water-soluble antioxidant in the cellular fluid and regenerates vitamin E after it has been oxidized. Finally, vitamin C enhances the absorption of iron. It is recommended that people with low iron stores consume foods rich in vitamin C along with iron sources to improve absorption. RDA for vitamin C is easily obtained. Most animals can make their own vitamin C from glucose. Humans and guinea pigs are two groups that cannot synthesize their own vitamin C and must consume it in their diet. As vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, we must consume it on a regular basis because any excess is excreted. The recommended intakes for food sources for vitamin C. The recommended food intakes for vitamin C are listed on table 9.1 in your text. Notice that smoking increases a person's need for vitamin C, thus the RDA for smokers is higher. Other high-stress situations that may increase the need for vitamin C include healing from the traumatic injury, surgery or burns, and the use of oral contraceptives among women. There is no consensus on how much extra vitamin C is needed in these circumstances. Although many people believe that vitamin C can prevent the common cold, a recent review found that people taking vitamin C supplements regularly to ward off the common cold experience as many colds as people taking a placebo. However, the duration of colds was modestly reduced by 8% in adults and 14% in children. Timing appears to be important, as those who took vitamin C after the onset of the cold did not reduce either the duration or severity of the cold. Fruits and vegetables are the best sources of vitamin C. Because the heat and oxygen destroy vitamin C, fresh sources are thus in these foods have highest content. Cooking foods, especially boiling them, leaches their vitamin C, which is then lost when we strain them. The forms of cooking that are least likely to compromise vitamin C content of foods are steaming, microwaving, and stir-frying. As you can see, this slide shows common sources of foods of vitamin C. So bell peppers, strawberries, grapefruits, pineapple, kiwi, orange, broccoli, cauliflower, sweet potatoes. But again, bell peppers, as you can see, have more than an orange. And then common RDA for men and women, it looks like 90 for men and somewhere around 76 for 78 for women. Because vitamin C is water soluble, we usually excrete any excess. Consuming excess amounts in food does not lead to toxicity, and only supplements can lead to toxic doses. Taking meta doses of vitamin C is not fatally harmful. However, side effects of doses exceeding 1,000 milligrams a day for prolonged periods cause nausea, diarrhea, nosebleeds, and abdominal cramping. There are rare instances in which consuming even moderately excessive doses of vitamin C can be harmful. As mentioned earlier, vitamin C enhances the absorption of iron. This action is beneficial for people who need to increase iron absorption. It can be harmful, however, to those with the disease called chromatosis, which causes an excess accumulation of iron in the body and leads to tissue damage and a heart attack. In people who have pre-existing kidney conditions, taking excessive vitamin C can lead to the formation of kidney stones. It does not appear to occur in healthy individuals. Vitamin C deficiencies are rare in developed countries, but can occur in developing countries. Scurvy is the most common vitamin C deficiency disease. Anemia can also result from vitamin C deficiency. People most at risk are those who eat few fruits and vegetables, including impoverished and homebound individuals, and people who abuse alcohol and drugs. What if you don't consume enough vitamin C? Again, scurvy is the most common disease, and then anemias can also result from vitamin C deficiencies. This is a picture that shows somebody with scurvy. So again, the symptoms of scurvy include bleeding gums, and it's the most common vitamin C deficiency disease. Bone health. What are the components and activities of bone health? Bones are living organisms that contain connective tissue, cartilage, and two types of bone tissue. Nerves and blood vessels run within channels in bone tissue, supporting its activity. Bones are the most important functions, have many important functions in the body. Bones health is achieved through a complex interaction among nutrients, hormones, and environmental factors. The composition of bone provides strength and flexibility. Bones are not totally rigid. They need to be both strong and flexible so that they can withstand compression, stretching, and twisting that occur in daily activity. Fortunately, the composition of bone is ideally suited for the complex job. About 65% of bone tissue is made up of assortment of minerals, mostly calcium and phosphorus, that provide hardness. The remaining 35% is a mixture of organic substances, including collagen, that provides strength, durability, and flexibility. Within our bones, the minerals form tiny crystals that cluster around collagen fibers. This design enables bones to bear weight while responding to the demands for movement. If you examine a bone very closely, you will notice two distinct types of tissue: cortical bone and trabecular bone. Cortical bone, also called compact bone, is very dense. It constitutes approximately 80% of the skeleton. The outer surface of all bones is cortical, plus many small bones of the body, such as the bones in the wrist, hands, and feet, are made entirely of cortical bone. Trabecular bone makes up 20% of the skeleton. It is found within the ends of the long bones, such as the bones of the arms and legs, the spinal vertebrae, and the sternum or breastbone, the ribs, most bones in the skull, and the pelvis. Trabecular bone is sometimes referred to as spongy bone because to the naked eye it looks like a sponge with cavities and no clear organization. The microscope reveals that trabecular bone is in fact aligned in a precise network of columns and protects the bone from stress. You can think of trabecular bone as a scaffolding inside the bone that supports the outer cortical bone. This particular slide shows the functions of bone. So the functions of bone relative to structure and support. So the bone provides physical support for organs and body systems. Bones protect the vital organs such as the ribs. The skull protects the brains. The vertebrae protects the spinal cord. And bones work with muscles and tendons to allow movement. The functions of metabolic processes. Bone tissue acts as a storage reservoir for many minerals, including calcium, phosphorus, and fluoride, and the body draws upon these deposits when the minerals are needed for various bodily processes. Most bone cells are produced in the bone marrow within the bone system. Again, there's two different types of bone tissue: cortical bone, compact bone, 80% of the skeleton, or trabecular bone or spongy bone, which is 20%. And there's a faster turnover of trabecular bone in the body than there is of the cortical bone. Here you see a picture at the ends of the long bones. This is the femur, and at the end of the long bone you'll see the spongy bone, trabecular bone scaffolding, and then you can also notice the cortical or compact bone that is all along the external surface of this particular structure. Bones develop through a series of three processes: bone growth, bone modeling, and bone remodeling. Bone growth and modeling. Through the process of bone growth, the size of bone increases. The first period of rapid bone growth is age birth to age 2. but growth continues in spurts throughout childhood and in adolescence. Girls typically reach their full adult height by the age of 18, and most boys continue to grow until the age of 21. Some loss of height occur in later decades of life because decreased bone density of the spine. Bone modeling is a process by which the shape of the bones is determined from a round pebble of our wrists to the uniquely shaped bones of the face and the long bones of the arms and legs. Although the size and shape of our bones do not change significantly after puberty, our bone density or compactness of our bones continues to develop in early adulthood. Peak bone density is the point at which our bones are strongest because they are at their fullest or highest density. The following factors are associated with lower peak bone density: late puberty in boys and the onset of menstruation in girls, inadequate calcium intake, low body weight, and physical inactivity during adolescence. About 90% of women's body bone density has been built by 17 years of age, whereas the majority of men's has been built by his 20s. Before we reach age 30, our bodies reach peak bone mass, and we can no longer significantly add to our bone density. In our 30s, the bone density remains relatively stable, but by the age of 40, it has begun its irreversible decline. Bone remodeling. Bone remodeling and the breakdown of older bone tissues or the formation of new bone occur throughout adulthood. Remodeling also occurs during fracture repair, and it strengthens bone regions that are exposed to higher physical stress. Cortical and tubercular bone differ in their rate of remodeling. Tubercular bone has a faster turnover rate than cortical bone. This makes tubercular bone more sensitive to fluctuations in hormone and nutritional deficiencies. It also accounts for a much higher rate of age-related fractures in the spine and pelvis, including the hip, both of which contain significant amounts of tubercular bone. The process of remodeling involves two steps: resorption and formation. Bone is broken down through resorption. During resorption, cells called osteoclasts erode the bone surface by excreting enzymes and acids that dig grooves into the bone matrix. One of the primary reasons the body regulates breakdown of bone is to release calcium into the bloodstream. The body also resorbs bone at the site of a fracture, smoothing out the rough edges created by the break. Bone may also be resorbed in areas away from the fracture site to obtain minerals that are needed to repair the damage. Regardless of the reason, once bone is broken down, the resulting products are transported in the bloodstream and used for various bodily functions. New bone is formed when the actions of osteoblasts or bone building cells. These cells work to synthesize new bone matrix by laying down collagen-containing organic component of bone. Within this substance, the crystals pack together to create new bone where it is needed. In young, healthy adults, the processes of bone resorption, and formation are equal, so that just as much bone is broken down as is built, maintaining bone mass. Around the age of 40, bone resorption begins to occur more rapidly than bone formation, and this imbalance results in the overall loss of bone density. Because this affects the vertebrae of the spine, people tend to lose height as they age. As discussed shortly, achieving the high peak bone mass through proper nutrition and exercise when we are young provides us with stronger skeleton before the loss of bone begins. It can therefore reduce our risks of osteoporosis, a disease characterized by low density fractures, which can fracture easily. Osteoporosis is discussed in the in-depth chapter. Again, bone remodeling involves resorption, which is the surface of the bone is broken down by the osteoclasts, and they remove excess bone material. And then the formation of new bone by the osteoblasts. And again, the osteoblasts produce the collagen-containing components of bone. Here you actually see bone remodeling. So you have the end of a long bone, which is the top of the femur by the greater trochanter. And you'll see the trabecular bone or the spongy bone at the top, and you'll see these are osteoclasts. The osteoclasts again go down and release enzymes and acids that break down the bone tissue and release it into the bloodstream. And then there's actually a delay between when the osteoclasts do their work. It could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months, and where the osteoblasts come back in and then repair the damage that the osteoclast or the degradation of the bone surface. Bone density is assessed with a DXA test, the dual energy X-ray absorptiometer. Is considered the most accurate assessment tool for measuring bone density. This method can measure the density of bone mass over the entire body. Software is also available that provides an estimation of percent of body fat. The DXA procedure is simple, painless, and non-invasive, and is considered to be of minimal risk. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes to complete. The person participating in the test is scanned fully clothed through the use of a very low level of X-ray. The DXA is a very important tool in determining a person's risk for osteoporosis. It generates a bone density score, which is compared to the average peak bone density for a healthy 30-year-old. Doctors use this comparison, known as the T-score, to assess the risk of fractures and determine whether the person has osteoporosis. T-scores are interpreted as follows. This actually shows the DXA, and this is showing bone density in, again, the greater trochanter, lesser trochanter, the top of the femur area, and this is the pelvis. A T-score between +1 and -1 means the individual's bone density is normal. A T-score between -1 and -2.5 indicates low bone mass and an increased risk for fractures. A T-score more negative than -2.5 indicates a person has osteoporosis. How do 4 minerals help maintain bone health? Calcium is the most recognized nutrient associated with bone health. However, phosphorus, magnesium, and fluoride are also essential for strong bones, as are vitamin D and vitamin K. Calcium is a major mineral component of bone. Recall in Chapter 1 that the major minerals are those required in our diet in amounts greater than 100 milligrams per day. Calcium is by far the most abundant major mineral in our body, comprising about 2% of our entire body weight. Not surprisingly, it plays many critical roles in the maintaining overall function and health. Functions of calcium. One of the primary functions of calcium is to provide structure to our bones and teeth. About 99% of calcium found in our body is stored hydroxyapatites, crystals built up on the collagen formation of the bone. The remaining 1% of calcium in our body is found in blood and soft tissues. Calcium is an alkali or a base and plays a critical role in assisting the acid-base balance. We cannot survive for long if our blood calcium level rises above or falls below a very narrow range. Therefore, our body maintains the appropriate blood calcium levels at all costs. In the focus feature in our textbook 9.13, it illustrates how various organ systems and hormones work together to maintain blood calcium levels. When blood calcium levels fall, the parathyroid gland are stimulated to produce parathyroid hormone. The parathyroid hormone stimulates the activity of vitamin D. Parathyroid hormone increases absorption of calcium in the kidneys, while parathyroid hormone and vitamin D stimulate osteoclasts to break down bone, releasing more calcium into the bloodstream. In addition, vitamin D increases the absorption of calcium in the intestines. Through these mechanisms, blood calcium levels increase. When blood calcium levels are too high, the secretion of parathyroid hormone is inhibited. This suppresses the synthesis of vitamin D, thereby leading to decreased reabsorption of calcium by the kidneys, decreased calcium absorption of the intestines, and inhibition of osteoclasts, which decreases the breakdown of bone. Calcium is also critical for normal transmission of nerve impulses. Calcium flows into the nerve cells and stimulates the release of molecules called neurotransmitters, which transfer the nerve impulses from one nerve cell neuron to another. Without adequate calcium, our nerves' ability to transmit messages is inhibited. When blood calcium levels fall dangerously low, a person can experience convulsions. A fourth role of calcium is to assist in muscle contraction, which is initiated when calcium is released from the storage areas in the muscle. Conversely, muscle relax when calcium is pumped back into these storage sites. If calcium levels are inadequate, normal muscle function, contraction, and relaxation are inhibited, and a person may suffer from twitching and spasms. High levels of blood calcium can prevent the muscle from relaxing, which leads to hardening or stiffening of the muscle. These problems affect the function not only of the skeletal muscles, but also of the heart muscle, and can cause heart failure. Other functions of calcium include maintenance of healthy blood pressure and the initiation of blood clotting and the regulation of various hormones and enzymes. Recommended intakes and food sources of calcium. The recommended intake of calcium are listed on table 9.1 in your text. Bioavailability depends in part by age and calcium need. For example, infants, children, and adolescents can absorb more than 60% of the calcium they consume because calcium needs are very high during these stages of life. In addition, pregnant and lactating women can absorb about 50% of the dietary calcium. In contrast, healthy young adults absorb only about 30% of the calcium they consume. When our calcium needs are high, the body can generally increase its level of absorption from the small intestine. Although older adults have a higher need for calcium, their ability to absorb calcium from the small intestine diminishes with age, can be as low as 25%. These variations in bioavailability and absorption capacity are taken into account when calcium recommendations are determined. The bioavailability of calcium also depends on how much calcium we consume throughout the day or at any one time. When our diets are generally high in calcium, absorption of calcium is reduced. In addition, our body cannot absorb more than 500 milligrams of calcium at any one time. And as the amount of calcium in a single meal or supplement goes up, the fraction of absorption goes down. This explains why it is critical to consume calcium-rich foods throughout the day rather than relying on a single dose or high-dose supplement. Conversely, when dietary intake of calcium is low, the absorption of calcium is increased. Dietary factors can also affect our absorption of calcium. Binding factors such as phytates and oxalates can occur naturally in some calcium-rich seeds, nuts, grains, and vegetables, such as spinach and Swiss chard. Such factors bind to the calcium in these foods and reduce its absorption from the small intestines. Additionally, consuming calcium with iron, zinc, magnesium, and phosphorus can interfere with the absorption and utilization of all these minerals. Despite the potential interactions, the Health and Medical Division of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine has concluded that there is not sufficient evidence to suggest that these interactions cause deficiencies of calcium and other minerals in healthy individuals. Finally, because vitamin D is necessary for the absorption of calcium, a lack of vitamin D severely limits the bioavailability of calcium. We'll discuss this and other contributions of vitamin D to bone shortly. Dietary products are among the most common sources of calcium in the diet. Skim milk, low-fat cheeses, non-fat yogurt are nutritional sources. Greek yogurts have also become very popular and are a good source of calcium, but their calcium content is lower than that of regular yogurt. A cup of Greek yogurt has about 270 milligrams of calcium compared to 448 milligrams in a cup of regular yogurt. This is due to the same calcium being lost in the straining process of Greek yogurt. Ice cream, regular cheese, whole milk also contain relatively high amounts of calcium, but these foods must be eaten in moderation because of their high fat and energy content. Other food non-dietary sources of calcium are green leafy vegetables such as kale, collard, turnip greens, broccoli, cauliflower, green cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and Chinese cabbage or bok choy. The bioavailability of calcium in vegetables is relatively high compared to spinach because these vegetables contain low levels of oxalates. Many processed foods are now fortified with calcium. For example, you can buy calcium-fortified orange juice, soy milk, and other milk alternatives, and tofu processed with calcium. Some dairies some dairies have also even boosted the amount of calcium in their brand of milk. Although many foods are a good source of calcium, many Americans do not have adequate intakes, or AIs, because they consume few dairy-based foods and calcium-rich non-dairy sources such as green leafy vegetables. Recent results of the National Health Nutrition Examination Survey indicates on the average, adult men between the ages of 20 to 59 exceed RDA for calcium. However, adult women across all ages and men 60 years and older fail to consume RDA for calcium. In general, consuming too much calcium from foods does not lead to toxicity in healthy individuals. Much of the excess calcium we consume is excreted in feces. However, an excessive intake of calcium from supplements can lead to health problems. Consuming too much calcium can interfere with the absorption of other minerals such as iron, zinc, magnesium, and lead to various mineral imbalances. Thus, may only be the major concern for individuals vulnerable to mineral imbalance, such as older individuals and people who consume very low amounts of minerals in their diet. Another potential problem is kidney stone formation. Calcium from foods does not increase risk of kidney stones, but taking calcium supplements can. Various diseases and metabolic disorders can alter our ability to regulate blood calcium. Hypercalcemia is a condition in which blood calcium levels reach abnormally high concentrations. This can be caused by cancer and by the overproduction of PTH, parathyroid hormone. Symptoms include fatigue, loss of appetite, constipation, mental confusion, and it can lead to liver and kidney failure, coma, and possible death. There's no short-term symptoms associated with consuming too little calcium. Even when we do not consume enough calcium in our diet, our body continues a tightly regulated blood calcium levels by taking calcium from the bone. A long-term repercussion of inadequate calcium intake is osteoporosis. Hypocalcemia is the abnormally low level of calcium in the blood. Hypocalcemia does not result from consuming too little dietary calcium, but is caused by various diseases, including kidney disease, vitamin D deficiency, and diseases that inhibit the production of parathyroid hormone. Symptoms of hypocalcemia include muscle spasms and convulsions. Our body has high calcium levels. The thyroid gland releases calcium, and this particular functions prevent calcium reabsorption from the kidneys. That limits calcium absorption from the intestines and inhibits osteoclast breakdown of the bone. This particular slide shows the regulation of blood calcium in the body. So it shows you what happens when you have high blood calcium levels, where it decreases the breakdown of bone from osteoclast. It decreases the absorption of calcium from the intestines, and it decreases the reabsorption of calcium by the kidneys. When you have low level of calcium, it increases the absorption of calcium from the intestines, increases the release of calcium into the bloodstream from the bones, which is meaning increasing the work of the osteoclast, and it increases the absorption of calcium by the kidneys. Again, the bioavailability is the degree to which the nutrient is available, and in calcium bioavailability, again, depends on age and need. We know that infants, children, and adults can absorb more than 60%. Lactating women can absorb 50%. Healthy adults typically absorb only 30%. As we age, we absorb less and less. Our bodies cannot absorb over 500 milligrams at any one time, so make sure that when you're taking your vitamin, your calcium supplements, you spread it out throughout the day. Here's common sources of calcium: yogurt, collard greens, yogurt, again, sardines, cheese, milk, Swiss cheese, cabbage, tofu, which is fortified, and then kale. What if you consume too much? You have hypercalcemia, which can be caused by cancer or the overproduction of parathyroid hormone. What if you don't consume enough calcium? You have hypocalcemia, which is low blood levels of calcium, which can be caused by kidney disease or a vitamin D deficiency. Phosphorus. Phosphorus combines with calcium in hydroxyapatite crystals. In the body, phosphorus is the most commonly found combined with oxygen to form a phosphate. About 85% of our body's phosphorus is stored in our bones, where it combines with calcium to form the hydroxyapatite crystals, which provide the hardness of the bone. In addition, phosphorus is a major intercellular negatively charged electrolyte. Phosphorus also helps activate and deactivate enzymes, and it is a component of lipoproteins, cell membranes, DNA, RNA, and several energy molecules, including adenosine triphosphate. The RDA for phosphorus is listed in Table 9.1. In general, phosphorus is widespread in many foods, and it is found in high amounts in foods that contain protein. Milk, meats, and eggs are good sources. Phosphorus is also found in many processed foods as food additive, where it enhances smoothness, binding, and moisture retention. Moreover, it is in the form of phosphoric acid. It is added to soft drinks to give them a sharper and more tart flavor and to slow the growth of molds and bacteria. Our society has increased its consumption of phosphorus during the last 30 years in processed foods and soft drinks. This can be detrimental to our health, as a recent study found that high phosphorus intake is associated with increased risk of premature mortality in healthy adults. People with kidney disease and those who take too much vitamin D supplements or too many phosphate-containing antacids can suffer from high blood phosphorus levels. Severely high levels of blood phosphorus can cause muscle spasms and convulsions. Phosphorus deficiencies are rare but can occur in adults who abuse alcohol, in premature infants, and in older adults with poor diets. People with vitamin D deficiencies, people with hyperparathyroidism, and those who overuse antacids that bind with the phosphorus may also have low blood phosphorus levels. Recommended intake again for phosphorus is 700 milligrams a day, and the sources typically are high protein containing foods, milk, meats, eggs. In processed foods, it's used as a food additive, and in soft drinks, it's used as phosphoric acid. What if you consume too much? You may have kidney disease. You may get kidney disease or excessive vitamin D supplements. What if you consume too little? These deficiencies are rare in healthy adults. Magnesium is a component of bone and helps regulate bone status. Magnesium is a major mineral. Our total body magnesium content is approximately 25 grams, about 50% to 60% of which is found in our bones. Magnesium is also important for the regulation of bone and mineral status. Specifically, magnesium influences the formation of hydroxyapatite crystals through its regulation of calcium balance and its interaction with the vitamin D and parathyroid hormone. Magnesium is a critical cofactor in more than 300 enzyme systems. It is necessary for the production of ATP, and it plays an important role in DNA and protein synthesis and repair. Magnesium supplementation has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, and there are epidemiological evidence that the high magnesium intake is associated with a decrease in the risk of colorectal cancer. Magnesium supports normal vitamin D metabolism and action, and is necessary for normal muscular contraction and blood clotting. The RDA for magnesium is identified on table 9.1 in your text. Magnesium is found in green leafy vegetables such as spinach, whole grains, seeds, and nuts. Other good sources include seafood and beans. Because magnesium is found in a wide variety of foods, people who regularly consume foods high in magnesium and who are adequately nourished should be consuming enough magnesium in their diets. The ability of small intestines to absorb magnesium is reduced when one consumes a diet that is extremely high in fiber and phytates, because these substances bind with magnesium. Even though seeds and nuts are relatively high in fiber, they are excellent sources of absorbable magnesium. Overall, our absorption of magnesium should be sufficient if we consume the recommended amount of fiber each day, which is 20 to 35 grams per day. In contrast, higher dietary protein intakes enhance the absorption and retention of magnesium. There is no known toxicity symptoms related to consuming excess magnesium in our diet. Here again, there are common sources of magnesium for adults 19 to 30 years of age. The RDA for magnesium is 400 milligrams per day. The RDA increases to 420 milligrams per day for men 35 years and older. For adult women 19 to 30 years of age, the RDA for magnesium is 310 per day. This value increases to 320 per day with women over the age of 31. Again, there's no known toxicity symptoms related to consuming excessive magnesium in our diet. The toxicity symptoms that result from pharmaceutical use of magnesium include diarrhea, nausea, and abdominal cramping. In extreme cases, large doses can result in acid-base imbalances, massive dehydration, cardiac arrest, and death. High blood level magnesiums, or hypermagnesiemia, occur in individuals with impaired kidney function who consume large amounts of non-dietary magnesium, such as antacids. Side effects include the impairment of nerve, muscle, and heart function. Hypomagnesemia, or low blood magnesium, result from magnesium deficiency. This condition may develop secondary to kidney disease, chronic diarrhea, or chronic alcohol abuse, and as a result of low dietary intake of magnesium. Low blood calcium levels are a side effect of having low magnesium levels. Symptoms of magnesium deficiency include muscle cramps, spasms or seizures, nausea, weakness, irritability, and confusion. Long-term magnesium deficiency is associated with osteoporosis, as well as other chronic diseases, including heart disease, high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes. Fluoride is found in teeth and bones, and it's a trace mineral and is an ion form in the element fluoride. About 99% of fluoride in our body is stored in our teeth and bones. During the development of the baby and permanent teeth, fluoride combines with calcium and phosphorus to form fluorohydroxyapatite, which is more resistant to destruction by acids and bacteria than is hydroxyapatite. Even after all of our permanent teeth are in, treating them with fluoride, whether at the dentist office or by using a fluorinated toothpaste, gives them more protection against dental cavities, and then the teeth have not been treated. That's because fluoride enhances tooth mineralization, decreases and reverses tooth demineralization, and inhibits metabolism of the acid-producing bacteria that causes tooth decay. Our need for fluoride is relatively small. The AI for fluoride is listed on Table 9.1. Fluoride is readily available in many communities in the United States through fluorinated water and dental products. In the mouth, fluoride is absorbed directly into the teeth and gums, and it can be absorbed from the GI tract once it has been ingested. There are concerns that individuals who consume bottled water excessively may be getting too little fluoride and increasing the risk of dental cavities because most bottled waters do not contain fluoride. However, these individuals may still consume fluoride through other beverages that contain fluorinated water and fluorinated dental products. Toothpaste and mouthwashes that contain fluoride are widely marketed and used by the majority of consumers in the United States. And these products can't contribute as much, if not more, fluoride than our diets can or than fluorinated water. Fluoride supplements are available only by prescription, and they are generally given only to children who do not have access to fluorinated water. Incidentally, tea is a good source of fluoride. One 8-ounce cup provides 20% to 25% of the AI. Consuming too little fluoride increases the protein content in tooth enamel, resulting in a condition called fluorosis. Because increased protein makes enamel more porous, the teeth become stained and pitted. Teeth seem to be at highest risk of fluorosis during the first 8 years of life when the permanent teeth are developing. To reduce the risk of fluorosis, children should not swallow oral care products that are meant for topical use only. Children under the age of 6 years old should be supervised when using fluorinated containing products. Mild fluorosis generally causes white patches on the teeth. That is, it has no effect on tooth function. Although moderate to severe fluorosis cause greater discoloration of teeth, there appears to be no adverse effect on the tooth function. Excess consumption of fluoride can also cause fluorosis of our skeleton. Mild skeletal fluorosis results in an increased bone mass and stiffness and pain in the joints. Moderate to severe skeletal fluorosis can be crippling, but it is extremely rare in the United States. The primary result of fluoride deficiency is tooth or dental cavities. Adequate fluoride intake appears necessary at an early age and throughout our adult life to reduce our risk of tooth decay. Again, the recommended intake for fluoride for women is 3 milligrams a day. For men, it's 4 milligrams a day. And again, sources of fluoride include fluorinated dental products and fluorinated water. What if you consume too much? You get fluorosis, excess fluoride. What if you don't consume enough? You'll end up with dental cavities. This is a picture that shows consuming too much fluoride causes fluorosis, leading to staining and pitting of the teeth. How do two fat-soluble vitamins support bone health? The fat-soluble vitamin D and K play very different roles in supporting bone health. Vitamin D regulates calcium. Vitamin D is like other fat-soluble vitamins in that we store excess amounts in our liver and adipose tissues. But vitamin D is different from other nutrients in two ways. First, vitamin D does not always need to come from our diet. This is because our bodies can synthesize vitamin D using energy from exposure to sunlight. However, when we do not get enough sunlight, we must consume vitamin D in foods or supplements. Second, in addition to being a nutrient, vitamin D is considered a hormone because it is made in one part of our body, yet regulates various activities in other parts of our body. Figure 9.17 illustrates how our body synthesizes vitamin D. When the ultraviolet light rays hit the skin, they react with 7-dehydrocholesterol. This compound is converted to cholecalciferol, which is also called provitamin D3. Here is the conversion of sunlight into vitamin D. So this process of converting sunlight into vitamin D in our skin, when the ultraviolet rays of the sun hit our skin, they react with 7-dehydrocholesterol. This compound is converted to cholecalciferol, an inactive form of vitamin D, also called provitamin D3. Cholecalciferol is then converted calcidiol in our liver. Calcidiol travels to the kidney where it is converted into calcitrol, which is considered the primary active form of vitamin D in our bodies. This slide is a map illustrates the geographical location of the 37th degree latitude in the United States. In the southern cities below 37 degree latitude, such as LA, Austin, Miami, the sunlight is strong enough to allow vitamin D to synthesize throughout the year. The northern cities above the 37th degree latitude, such as Seattle, Chicago, Boston, the sunlight is too weak from about mid-October to mid-March to allow the adequate vitamin D synthesis. Functions of vitamin D, as illustrated in the focus figure 9.13, vitamin D and parathyroid hormone work together continuously to regulate blood calcium levels. They do this by regulating the absorption of calcium and phosphorus from the small intestine, causing more to be absorbed when our needs for them are higher and less when our needs are lower. They also decrease and increase blood calcium levels by signaling the kidneys to excrete more or less calcium in our urine. Finally, vitamin D works with parathyroid hormone to stimulate osteoclasts to break down bone when calcium is needed elsewhere in the body. Vitamin D is also necessary for the normal calcification of bone. This means that it assists the process by which minerals such as calcium and phosphorus are crystallized. Vitamin D may also play a role in decreasing the formation of some cancerous tumors, as it can prevent certain types of malignant cells from growing out of control. Also, like vitamin A, vitamin D appears to play a role in cell differentiation in various tissues. Recommended intake and sources of food. If your exposure to sunlight is adequate, then you do not need to consume any vitamin D in your diet. But how do you know whether you're getting enough sun? Of many factors that affect our ability to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight, latitude and time of year are most significant. People living in very sunny climates relatively close to the equator, such as in southern United States and Mexico, may synthesize enough vitamin D from the sunlight to meet their needs throughout the year, as long as they spend time outdoors. However, vitamin D synthesis from the sun is not possible during most of the winter months for people living in places such as the latitude of more than 37 degrees north and more than 37 degrees south. That these latitudes in the winter, the sun never rises high enough in the sky to provide amount of direct sunlight needed. Other factors influencing vitamin D synthesis are time of day, skin color, age, and body weight status. More vitamin D can be synthesized during the time of the day when the sun's rays are strongest, usually between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Vitamin D synthesis is severely limited or may be non-toxic on overcast days. Darker skin contains more melanin pigment, which reduces the penetration of sunlight. Thus, people with darker skin have a more difficult time synthesizing vitamin D from the sun than do light-skinned people. People 65 years and older experience a fourfold decrease in their ability to synthesize vitamin D from the sun. They are also more likely to spend more time indoors and may have inadequate dietary intake. Obesity has recently been found to cause lower levels of circulating vitamin D. Although the exact mechanism for this finding is not clear, the study implicated variations in genes associated with the synthesis and breakdown of vitamin D. Other possible contributions include lower bioavailability of cholecalciferol from adipose tissues, decreased exposure to sunlight due to limited mobility and time spent outdoors, with skin exposure and alterations of vitamin D metabolism in the liver. Wearing protective clothing and sunscreen greater than 8 limits sun exposure, so it suggests that we expose our hands, feet, and arms to the sun 2 to 3 times per week for a period of time that is 1/3 of 1/2 of the amount needed to get a sunburn. That means that if you normally sunburn in 1 hour, you should expose yourself to the sun 20 to 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week to synthesize adequate amounts of vitamin D. Again, this guideline does not apply to people living in the northern climates during the winter months. They can get enough vitamin D only by consuming it in their diet. The recommended intake of vitamin D are identified in Table 9.1 in your text, and currently the RDA is based on the assumption that an individual does not get adequate exposure. Recent evidence suggests the RDA may not be sufficient to maintaining optimal bone health and reduce risk of disease such as cancer. The controversy surrounding vitamin D recommendations is discussed in more detail later in this book. Most foods naturally contain little vitamin D. A few exceptions are cod liver oil, fatty fish, such as salmon, mackerel, tuna, and sardines. Foods with few Americans consume in adequate amounts. Eggs, butter, margarines, and liver also provide very small amounts of vitamin D. Thus, the primary sources of vitamin D in the diet are fortified foods. In the United States, milk is fortified with 100 IU units of vitamin D per cup. Additional foods fortified with vitamin D include milk alternatives, breakfast cereals, margarine, orange juice, and yogurt. Because plants contain very little vitamin D, vegetarians who consume no fortified dairy products need to obtain their vitamin D from sun exposure, fortified milk, alternatives, or cereal products or supplements. When reading the labels of fortified foods and supplements, you will see the amount of vitamin D expressed in units of either UG or IU. The conversion purposes, 1 UG of vitamin D is equal to 40 IUs of vitamin D. Here again are common food sources for vitamin D: salmon, mackerel, milk fortified, Cheerios fortified, cornflakes fortified. We cannot get too much vitamin D from the sun exposure because our skin has the ability to limit its production. Just as just noted, foods containing little natural vitamin D. Thus, the only way we can consume too much vitamin D is through supplementation. Consuming too much vitamin D causes hypercalcemia, or high blood calcium concentrations. See the section on calcium for signs and symptoms of hypercalcemia. In addition, toxic levels of vitamin D lead to increased bone loss because calcium is then pulled from the bones and excreted more readily by the kidneys. The primary deficiency associated with inadequate vitamin D is bone loss. In fact, when levels of vitamin D are inadequate, the small intestines can only absorb 10 to 15% of the calcium we consume. Vitamin D deficiencies occur most in individuals who have diseases that cause internal malabsorption of fats and thus fat-soluble vitamins. People with liver disease, kidney disease, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, cystic fibrosis, or Whipple's disease may suffer from vitamin D deficiencies and require supplements. Vitamin D deficiency disease in children, called rickets, is caused by inadequate mineralization or demineralization of the skeleton. The classic signs of rickets is deformation of the skeleton, such as bowed legs and knocked knees. However, severe cases can be fatal. Rickets is not common in the United States because of the fortification of milk products with vitamin D, but children with illnesses that cause fat malabsorption or who drink no milk and get limited sun exposure are at increased risk. There is no national surveillance program for rickets, and thus it is not clear what the prevalence of rickets is in the United States. However, in recent studies conducted in Minnesota, found that increase in the number of cases of rickets in children 3 years of age and younger from 0 in 2070 to 24 per 100,000 in 2000. Increased risk of these children is higher than for light-skinned children. Oh, wait a minute. Increased risk in these children is associated with having darker skin because of the need for adequate sun exposure is higher than that for light skin. The breastfeeding breastfeeding, most because breast milk contains little vitamin D. None of the breastfed children were reported to have received vitamin D supplementation before being diagnosed. Other contributing factors including poor feeding, limited sun exposure, limited milk intake, and predominantly vegetarian diet, or being born prematurely. Vitamin D deficiencies disease in adults is called osteomalacia, a term meaning soft bones. With osteomalacia, bones become weak and prone to fracture. Osteoporosis can also result from vitamin D deficiencies. This is a slide of a child with rickets. They can end up with severely bowed legs from having soft bones.